Okay, coaches. Scott asked me, or I think Jim may have asked me, to create a quick overview of the personal development plan I brought up in our masterminds meeting a couple of months ago. And so this is it. We're all familiar with the 100-day plan that we currently have to help create some intentionality among frontline staff and even managers of companies. I've found, however, by using this plan both in my company and by talking to members, that unless someone has been brought up in a family that set goals, they've never really been taught how to set goals. And so by giving this form to an employee, sometimes they get a deer in headlights look that they don't even know where to begin. What are the goals that they should be setting for themselves? And so as we face this challenge, our director of HR had brought to us a process called catalytic coaching, which was a multi-step process designed to replace an annual review and help create intentionality in the career of an employee and break down their goals into an annual and quarterly basis. And so I've adapted the forms so that Nexstar can use them, and it's a little more specific to our trade. And I wanted to take time today to just review the structure of this process, go into some specifics of the forms and thoughts about how you might use them, and then review the timeline of how this would actually be executed in a shop. So the first thing is, let's review the process. It is a 4-step process with the 4th step culminating in the 100-day plan we're already familiar with. It starts out by giving the employee a self-reflection form. And this is a form designed to prime the pump when it comes to goal setting. It offers for the employee to think back on their past growth, their past achievements. It has the employee think about how they've contributed to the team. It gets them thinking about anything pertinent presently that they feel they need to share with you, the manager or the owner. And then it has them think about where they want to go in the future. And so this form is really designed to help create ownership and responsibility in the career path of that employee. The second form is the adding perspective form. And so this is a form completed by you, the manager or owner, and it's designed to give feedback and guidance from your point of view regarding that employee's performance and what areas they may have for improvement. The third step is now from the employee's point of view. They've had some time reflecting on what their progress has been over the last year, how they've contributed to the company, how they've grown, where they want to go. They've had input from you, the manager, on what their strengths are, what their areas of opportunities are. And so now, having the ingredients floating around in their head, we give them this Be Intentional form. And this is really just an annual goal setting form. Once they have the annual goal setting form, have outlined some clear goals for themselves, then we chunk it down into the quarterly process known as the 100-day plan, and we review this with them every quarter. So step by step, we're working on helping them to achieve their annual goals. So these are the 4 steps. There's a form for each step. I'll now go through each form and give some thoughts on how you might use it and complete it. So the first form is the self-reflection. As I had mentioned earlier, there's 3 basic areas this focuses on for the employee: their past growth and performance. And so it asks them personally, how have they grown? What skills have they developed? Who have they met that's had a significant impact while they've worked there? What lessons have they learned? How has their performance aided the success of the team as a whole? What did they want to accomplish but didn't get done? So really getting them to think about the last 12 months. Then it has them think about the present. And this is a great opportunity to pull amazing ideas out of employees. Here it asks them, what are they seeing from their point of view? What are great ideas that they have that could help the team be more successful, or that they feel would help them be more successful? It then asks them anything that they're concerned about that they would like to share, how they feel about their pay and benefits, and anything else in general that wasn't covered already that they would like to share. And then it culminates in getting them to think about the future. Where do they see themselves a year from now, 3 years from now, long term? And so what I usually do is, when I introduce this process to the employees, is about the time of their annual review process, and I share with them that we're doing something new. We're doing a 4-step process that will help them create annual goals for themselves with specific quarterly action items. And the first step is for them to give some thought over the last 12 months and their performance. And so I hand them this form, and usually I offer them to take some time to think about it. And so I'll set a follow-up date 1 week from the day I give it to them and tell them, don't complete the form right away. Read through the questions, give it some thought. A well thought out answer is going to be more beneficial for you in creating your goals than just a quick last minute answer. So give them the form, schedule a follow-up meeting 1 week from there. At the time that you give them their form, that self-reflection form, I would encourage you to go ahead and complete Form 2, which is adding perspective. And the reason for this is I found it offers you an opportunity to give feedback without bias. Because I've done it both ways. I've had the employee deliver Form 1 to me, and then all that information is kind of rattling around in my head. And since it's more recent, I find it starts impacting what I would give them as feedback. So if you create this form or complete this form while they're completing yours, you have a fresh perspective. It's going to avoid replicating or being impacted by anything they said on Form 1. So the details of this form, we're really focusing on 3 areas from our perspective. What are the employee's assets or their strengths? What are their opportunities for improvement? And what support we're willing to give them. And so the assets are just any positive traits you've noticed about them or specific things that they've done recurrently throughout the last 12 months. And I would encourage a structure of whittling this down to short phrase answers. So for example, a positive trait would be gregarious. And so write the word gregarious and then put a hyphen and give a brief explanation of what you mean by that. So, Bob, one of the positive traits I've noticed about you is that you're a gregarious guy. And what I mean by that is you always have a positive attitude, you're communicating with others, you're always laughing, just really a natural relator. And so that's what we'll put on the form. And then maybe on a separate piece of paper, write down 3 examples that backs that up. And that's really critical here because this sends the message that we're not pulling ideas or traits out of the air, but we've actually been watching them over the last 12 months and kind of keeping an eye on them. And so we would give 3 examples of when we've seen that gregarious nature come up. And the same thing for anything they specifically do, that they're an excellent diagnostician. And 3 examples I've seen for that is when we had that callback on Sally Sue and nobody could fix it. And we sit you out there and 45 minutes in, you figured out exactly what it was. And the reason for doing this is, 1, like I said, it shows that we're constantly watching them and we care about them and we're interested in them. But 2, this structure is going to aid us as we move into the next section, which is your opportunities. So these are some areas that could either be improvement for the employee or opportunities for advancement. If they are improvement and maybe corrective in nature, an employee may have a tendency to give some rebuttals or excuses, but if we have this structure of giving 3 examples, it's kind of hard to rationalize away 3 examples of something that needs improvement. So, twofold there. So speaking of opportunities for improvement, we're going to break them down into 3 categories. So opportunities that would be of value now, and so this would be anything that the employee could enhance or improve upon in their current role to help them to be more successful in their current role. So if it was a technician, conversion rate would be an excellent example. The next area is areas of opportunity that would be of benefit in the future. So perhaps you've got a high-performing technician, you're thinking that perhaps he could move into a field supervisory role in the future, but maybe he's lacking finer communication skills or maybe computer skills. And so an opportunity he could seize that would be of benefit in the future if he was going to take on that supervisory role would be to be more adept at typing, or gain mastery in typing. And then the last area would be anything critical that has to be addressed immediately. And so these are the non-negotiables. Perhaps the employee is having trouble with tardiness. Perhaps they're having trouble with filling out their paperwork. And these are things that need to be rectified or otherwise it could cost him his job. And so the last piece of advice I would offer, using the same structure as above, try to simplify it to a short phrase, hyphenate it with a description of what you mean, and then have your 3 examples on a scratch piece of paper that you can share with them. But also pay attention to the phrasing. Try to phrase it in the positive. So instead of "you're always late" or "don't be late," the positive of that would be "arriving on time." So write down the opportunity for improvement as if they've already completed it. And the reason for this is we want them to focus on the positive. We want to help them achieve that area for improvement and seize it and not focus on the negative. The last area is what support. And using those same 3 areas in the opportunities, what would be of value now, in the future, and must be addressed immediately, we're going to offer them advice or whatever we're willing to give as their manager or as a company to aid them in seizing those opportunities. So for the example of conversion rate, maybe what we're willing to offer is sending them to a service system training school, or having a senior tech ride with them, or giving them more one-on-one coaching sessions. These would be examples of what we might include here to support them. And the reason for this is we want them to know that we're with them, that we do want them to achieve. This isn't a beat-up session about, hey, you need to improve in these areas, go make it happen or else. It's, hey, these are some opportunities that would make you a better technician out there. And by the way, we're invested in getting you to that point. And so this is what we're willing to do. And so it's a very supportive coaching approach versus a managerial critique. So this is Form 2, adding our perspective. And at this point, we're going to complete our form, the tech's completing theirs. Once the week has passed, we'll meet back with the tech, and we're only going to go over the first form, the employee's form. And so at that meeting, we'll give them up to 1 hour to share with us what they wrote on their form. And I usually like to make a copy of the form they completed ahead of time so that I can jot notes on it. And it's critical during this meeting that we withhold any feedback or our opinions. This is basically us giving the employee a wide open ear. So we can ask questions to gain better understanding, to dig deeper, but really it's the employee sharing his perspective and us asking questions to make sure we understand it. Then 1 to 2 days after that meeting, we'll schedule a follow-up meeting where we'll share our perspective. Now, when we share our perspective, the roles are reversed. The employee's doing all the listening. We're now doing all the talking. And I would offer to hold the copy of this form until the end of the meeting, because you really want the employee to be listening to what you're talking about and not reading ahead to see what you wrote in other sections. So I usually encourage them to bring a form or a notepad and a pen to jot down notes. And so they're all ears as you give your perspective. And then at the end of this meeting, I'm going to send them away with Form 3, which is the personal development plan, Be Intentional step. And this is the annual goal setting form. So now armed with their reflection of their performance over the last 12 months, having given some thought of where they want to be in the next year, the next 3 years, and our feedback as their manager and what their areas of improvement are and their strengths, they now have a good information to complete this. And usually I'll offer for them, as they're completing this annual form, this annual goal sheet, all that I ask is if there was any area for improvement I mentioned on Form 2, that they have at least one annual goal that will help move the needle on that area for improvement or that opportunity for improvement. Once they have at least one goal for each opportunity or area for improvement, they're free to use any remaining spots for their own goals. And I've intentionally created this form where there's 4 spots for career company goals at the top, and then there's 2 spots at the bottom for their personal goals. Because I firmly believe their life, their career is like that balance wheel we talked about in some of our training classes. You know, that there's different facets of our life. There's who we are at work, there's our friends, there's our personal life, there's our financial life, there's our health and well-being, and each of them are like a spoke on that wheel. And if any one of those spokes has been or fallen short, it's going to create a flat spot in the wheel of our life. And so by helping them not only to focus on their career and their performance at work, but giving them the option to set some goals in their personal life, we're helping to ensure a well-balanced will. And I've come to found that this just pays dividends. As employees go through this process and they learn the goal setting process, and they're making strides not only in their career but in their personal life, and we're willing to support them, they're just willing to give back 10 100-fold. So creating a well-balanced will. And usually as I give this to them, I'll also review the SMART goal concept. So as you think about the goals that you're going to put here, make sure they're specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And I'll give them an example usually of a bad goal. So Bob, a bad goal is I want to lose weight. How could you change that into a SMART goal? And what I'm looking for is, I want to lose 15 pounds by December 31st. Great, SMART goal. It's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's relevant, and it's time-bound. So I send them off with this, give them 1 week to come up with their annual goals. We meet again a week later, review it. Sometimes I'll coach them to tighten up some goals, to apply the SMART rules a little bit better. So usually there's a rework, tighten them up, making them more specific and time-bound. But once we have a solid annual goal set, then we'll go to our 100-day plan and we'll chunk it down into the individual action items that'll help them to achieve it over the next quarter. And we're familiar with how to utilize this process, so I won't go in any deeper here. So in review, the timeline of how execution of these 4 steps would look. Anniversary date of the employee, you're going to give them form number 1, the self-reflection form. You're going to take form number 2, the adding perspective form. And you're going to set a meeting date 1 week from the time you give the form out. During that week, the employee will complete their form, you'll complete your form. Once 1 week has elapsed, you meet with a technician. They have up to 1 hour to share what they wrote on their self-reflection form. You're going to ask questions for clarity and depth, but withhold any feedback. After that meeting completes, you'll set a follow-up meeting 1 to 2 days later, which you'll deliver your adding perspective form. Now the roles shift, the employee's mostly listening, you're giving feedback, examples of their strengths, their opportunities for improvement, and how you're going to support them. Now armed with this information, you'll conclude that meeting by giving them the Be Intentional form, which is the annual goal setting form, and give them 1 week to craft goals that they want to set for themselves over the next year. Now remember, the only caveat is they must have at least 1 goal that relates for any area of opportunity you listed. You meet again a week later, review the annual goal setting form, make some adjustments, rewrite it to tighten it up if necessary, and then have them create a quarterly action plan. From here, we'll meet once a quarter for the remaining 3 quarters to review progress on the quarterly action plan, to create new quarterly action plans, and to update the annual plan as needed. Then the process repeats itself, going through all 4 steps at the anniversary date of the employee. So using this process, I found a higher level of engagement among the staff. It helped with the retention of the staff. Had some really emotional meetings, where people set some not only great career goals, but some personal goals. I remember one of our employees was close to 50, and he had no retirement plan in place. And so we helped to support him by sending him to some Dave Ramsey event and getting him in contact with one of our retirement planning coaches from our 401k plan. And so it's a great way just to invest in your employee. They see that you're investing in them. And when people feel that you're helping them achieve what they want to achieve, they oftentimes will reciprocate and help you achieve what it is you want to achieve, which is your goals. So hopefully this was helpful. Shoot me an email if you have any questions. Take care.